Okay, now we're going to go to page 38 in the workbook. We're going to see document 5, does it say? We see here soil fertilizers or the decomposers. We're going to know what do we mean by decomposers. We have here bacteria, earthworm, columbolus, apparently a type of insect, dust mite, and centipede. All these small animals live in the soil. They transform the remains of dead animals and plants into soil matter. This matter makes the soil fertile, where many plants can grow and develop. So they are saying that these animals live inside the soil, and now in spring, if you dig in the soil, you can see them clearly. And they eat or feed on the remains of dead animals and plants. They feed, for example, on the dead leaves. If there's a dead animal, they can feed on it. They feed on dead plants, etc. And when they eat these dead plants or animals, they transform them, they change them into soil matter. This soil matter makes the soil fertile. Fertile means that it's good for the growth of other plants. Decomposers, by this way, contribute, therefore, in fertilizing the soil. Let's see now document 6. An earth digger, which is the earthworm. We all know the earthworm. We see here its shape. Then we see that it digs a hole inside the soil and makes twists, what we call vice twist, and etc. Let's see what they are saying about it. The earthworm digs tunnels in the humid soil. In order to dig up tunnels, it swallows a lot of earth. So it eats the dirt, it eats the soil, and digs the tunnel, its way through the soil. We say it is eating up its way. It rejects the content of its intestine in the form of twists. So these are the feces of the earthworm, or the droppings of the earthworm. The swallowed earth is rich in animal and plant remains, which constitutes its food. The earthworm is a decomposer. The digging of tunnels allows the different soil layers to mix together and contributes in ensuring a good soil ventilation. So these twists are full of good material for the soil, and the tunnels that the earthworm makes lets the air enter into the soil and helps in soil ventilation. It keeps the soil ventilated and full of oxygen and air for other plants to live properly. Okay, now let's answer the questions. First, number 3A. What chemical products does the farmer use to fertilize the soil? As we know that farmers sometimes use some chemical substances to make the soil better for the growth of plants. We all know that they use mineral salts. So the farmer uses mineral salts to fertilize the soil. How do the decomposers help in the soil fertilization? As we saw in the documents, the centipede, the bacteria, the earthworm, how do they help in the soil fertilization? We can see that decomposers transform the remains of dead animals and plants into soil matter. This matter fertilizes the soil. So they feed on the remains of dead animals and transform them into soil matter. Now, number 4. Why is the earthworm called an earth digger? Digger means that digs. The earthworm is so called because in order to dig tunnels, it swallows a lot of earth, and hence it mixes different soil layers together, thus ensuring a good soil ventilation. So they dig holes into the ground or tunnels and mixes the soil and helps in the ventilation of the soil. Now let's see a video that explains more about decomposers.
The great circle of life. What begins must have an end. The leaves and plants that lay lifeless in this backyard become a buffet for creatures like the pillbug. Decomposition is part of the natural order of things. This process consists of organisms breaking down the dead and decaying parts of the environment and reducing it to base nutrients, then returning it to the living ecosystem. This has kept forests and pockets of nature going for millions of years, a self-sustaining way of life. Pillbugs, earthworms, snails and millipedes form an important component of the larger decomposer fauna. All of these animals return organic matter to the soil, where it is further digested by fungi, protozoans, and bacteria, hence making nitrates, phosphates, and other vital nutrients available to plants. The true masters of the soil are the earthworms. Their sole responsibility is to filter the soil and create a rich and fertile soil composition for plant life to flourish. Most earthworms feed on undecayed leaf and other plant matter. Others are more geophagous, feeding on clay and soot to filter out the nutrients from other more harmful sources of food in their environment. The soil excretions that the earthworms produce are nearly 10 times more nutrient-rich than the surrounding topsoil. It is well worth it to have a few creepy crawlers in one's garden. There are
So as we saw here, how different decomposers help in the fertilizing of soil. And now to solve the question mark, the question says, what is meant by interdependence between animals and plants? Give examples. So as we saw in the documents and in the videos, we saw that there are different relationships between animals and plants. Some of them help each other, some of them harm each other. So we can say that interdependence is a type of or all the relationships between animals and plants. So if we can answer here, we can say interdependence are relationships between organisms living in the same habitat. So here's the main point: they have to live in the same habitat. We can't say, for example, that there's an interdependence between an aphid in Lebanon and a flower, for example, in Italy, because they do not live in the same habitat. They have to be living together, they have to be interacting together. For example, an aphid and a flower, ladybird and flower, etc. Now, if we want to explain the relationships between different organisms, we are going to take these examples from the book. We will start with the aphid and the flower. If we take the aphid and the flower, the relation between them, we can say that the aphid benefits. Aphid benefits. We call the aphid the parasite. I'm going to explain later what we mean by this word. While if we look at the flower, which is the host, is harmed. So the aphid benefits, but the flower is harmed. It becomes sick. Here we call the type of relation, we call it parasitism. Parasitism means when there is an organism that lives on another organism and harms it. It benefits, but the other organism gets harmed. So we say the first organism is called parasite, which is the harmful organism, and the other organism that gets harmed or gets hurt is called the host. Okay? Now, let's take the other example, tit and plant. If we remember the tit and the plant, the bird which eats the caterpillar, we can say here that the tit benefits because it eats, it's getting its food. At the same time, also the plant benefits because the tit, when it eats the caterpillar, it saves the plant and it rids it from the insect pests, as we said. So here, the type of relation is not parasitism, it is called mutualism. So mutualism is when both organisms benefit. For example, here the tit benefits and the plant benefits, we call it mutualism. The bee on the flower now. Here, the bee benefits, of course, because it's taking food, it's feeding, okay? At the same time, the flower is also benefiting because the bee carries the pollen to other flowers and makes pollination and makes new flowers and plants. So here we can see also that both organisms benefit. What do we call this relation? Yes, it is also mutualism. Let's see now the sheep and the new plant. Remember the sheep that carry the seed on their back, on their wool, without even noticing, and then they help in the seed distribution to other places? Let's see here. The sheep isn't affected. The sheep isn't affected at all. While it's eating, the seed sticks on its body and it moves, then it will spread the seed to other places. While the new plant or the plants in general, they benefit because they are spreading the seeds. Here there's a new type of relation which we call commensalism. Commensalism is when one organism benefits, the other isn't affected. It neither benefits nor it gets harmed. Okay, we'll see this video here to understand more about these relationships.
Symbiosis. With so many organisms living on Earth, living things are bound to interact with one another. Symbiosis is a close relationship between two species. One type of interaction is called mutualism. An example of mutualism exists between honeybees and flowers. Flowers provide nectar to the bees. The bees use the sugar-rich liquid to make honey. But as the bee flies from flower to flower, tiny grains of pollen get stuck to the bee. The bee moves the pollen without even knowing it, and pollen is necessary for flowers to reproduce. In this relationship, both species benefit. The bees get nectar and the flowers get pollinated. Another relationship is called commensalism. This interaction takes place when the sharks and remorae live together. Remorae use sucking discs on their heads to attach themselves to sharks. The sharks are powerful swimmers and do not even notice that the remorae are there. However, the remorae benefit from this relationship. The fish get a free ride, and they also get protection. Also, the remorae feed on scraps that are left over by the shark. In commensalism, one species benefits, and the other is neither helped nor harmed. The last symbiotic relationship is called parasitism. An example of this relationship exists between humans and mosquitoes. The insects land on and take blood from humans. The mosquito benefits as it uses the blood for energy. The human or host is harmed in this relationship, as blood is needed, and the human could become infected with disease. In parasitism, one species benefits and the other is harmed. Mutualism, a relationship where both species benefit. Commensalism, one species benefits and the other is neither helped nor harmed. Parasitism, one species benefits and the other is harmed. Symbiosis.
So, if you want to summarize what do we mean by symbiosis or what are the symbiotic relationships, we have 3 symbiotic relationships as the video said. First, mutualism. What do we mean by mutualism? Is when both organisms benefit from each other, such as a bee and the flower. The other type of symbiotic relation is parasitism. What do we mean by parasitism? Is the relation when one organism, which we call parasite, hurts another organism, which we call host, and lives on it, such as the aphid and the flower. In the video we saw the mosquito and the man. Now, the last type of symbiotic relationship is commensalism. Commensalism is when one organism benefits while the other is not affected, such as the sheep and the seed, the fish and the remora fish and the shark. So as we see here, these are the three types of symbiotic relationships, which are best examples on interdependence between organisms in the same habitat. To practice more and understand more, please solve exercise 1, page 40 in the workbook. The solution will be sent next week.